Why should you start a garden? There's been a lot of increase in interest in gardening, increase in farming, increase in this traditional, if you want to call it, lifestyle in the past couple of years. And it's really, really interesting to see how more and more people are getting interested as time goes on. It's so, for me, it's so fascinating to see how culture is shifting and more homeopathic ideas or different ideas of that schooling or just all these things. Culture is totally shifting. In fact, even sourdough culture. 3 years ago, if you made sourdough, you were like super crunchy. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if you bought organic, imagine that you were like the earthy, crunchy person. Now it's amazing how like the different generations, the different cultures, culture is shifting significantly. And I want to talk about why you personally should start a garden and the benefits of it outside of, the first reason, the most obvious reason is how locally produced your food is. A lot of food comes from these crazy places. Not crazy as in like, I have all respect for these countries and stuff, but I don't want food, tomatoes. For example, I just saw in the store, we went to a store for something. Yes, I still go to the store, even though I grow a majority of my greens and I hunt a lot of my meat. Or if I don't hunt it, I buy it from a farm, like in bulk. For example, I buy a whole cow and everything. But that being said, if I if we went to the store recently, and I saw grapes coming from Peru, like I'm a really big believer in relatively eating with the season unless it's been preserved, because then you're preserving the most of the freshness, the most nutrients. Outside of that, though, like I live in New York. How in the world did they get grapes come from Peru to New York? And first of all, the mass production of them, and then how they prevent them from like pest prevention, all that stuff, like between all the pesticides and herbicides and then just the practicality of how early you had to harvest it to get here. How the tomatoes are grown green or are harvested green, and then they sprayed with a chemical to one help them stay green, but also help them to ripen because they were poked off too early. So you have complete control over the nutrition that you're putting in your body. You are what you eat, that old saying. But that's the most obvious. The second, and the next ones I want to talk about are less obvious and things that I've learned through doing it. The second one is it helps you slow down. Man, there is something so peaceful. Now, granted, it's stressful as well, but there's something so peaceful about spending time in the garden and just resetting your brain and being, first of all, you're outside, you're getting time outside, which, actually, even in the science, they say is good for you. But getting your hands dirty, working with nature, working in nature, and creating nature, essentially, there's something so peaceful about it. And granted, it comes with its own headaches. I battle the weather, I battle the animals, I battle my dog stepping on things in the garden. I battle my kid pulling things out. And you're like, oh, I just spent 6 weeks growing that, and now my daughter just ripped that out of the garden. There's definitely frustration, but there is something so peaceful in doing it as well. Another thing is it can be a little difficult. Now there are things you can grow easily, but I think that there is something good about challenge in life. We have become such a culture of comfort that I want, like, pushing yourself is actually really good for your brain and good, like it gives us a purpose and it gives us a little bit of grit inside. And I think we've lost it as a society. So the determination to push forward and just try new things and when things don't work, okay, how can I fix this? And learning new things is really good for our brain, keeps us stimulated. Otherwise, we're just scrolling on our phones and watching things on TV, which I have nothing against. I love, dude, I'm in all these TV series as well, but it's the balance of the two, and I think it's really, really important. The next one is, for me, it made the Bible come alive. I'm a Christian, I believe in God and Jesus, and there are so many biblical references to farming and growing and nature that when I started to understand how horticulture and how growing works, I'm like, oh, that's what he means by harvesting and this and then just you understand it to some degree when you don't have a garden, but the more you tend to the earth, the more you realize how these things come alive and how you see God in the garden. It's like, oh wow, you just see him in nature and see how things work and see that the Bible comes alive in different ways. Um, the last one I want to talk about is mental health. I don't know the science behind it. I don't totally know how it works, but there is 100% has increased my mental health by being out in the garden, by being, I struggled with anxiety and OCD for most of my life. Now, I'm not saying it totally cured it. There were other things that helped as well, but being outside, being in nature, working with my hands working towards something, having a goal and seeing the progression of it. You know the amount of joy it brought when I got my first broccoli head? I'm like, this is unbelievable. I grew this. It's amazing. Now, granted, you want to have a theology lesson of like how it's really God helping us do these things. But outside of that, it was me that planted the seed, and then it's amazing. There's such joy in it, and then even when you have to work through the frustration and adversity, like wow, these, like for example, like you look in this entire garden, I had tons of broccoli and cauliflower in here at the beginning of the season. Somehow some animal, most likely a rabbit, got in and decimated them. So it's super frustrating. However, when I then have this success, it is super rewarding, and there's something in that. At least for me, I just come alive in doing it. I highly recommend. It changes the way you see life, the way you view life, the way you view food. Give it a try. Let 2026 be the year that you even start just to grow a couple. If you're not looking to do every single thing in the book, which is how I did it, it's fun. It's a little overwhelming, but it's a lot of fun when you do that because you can try all new things. But even if you just start by growing a tomato and a cucumber, just start and you realize the joy in it and how it'll change your life and change your perspective on life and change the benefits of life. So I highly recommend that. If you haven't gotten started, definitely consider starting this year.